I've spent a great deal of my adult life resisting the push, the pull, and societal expectations of following a traditional career path in order to fulfill my creative outcomes, which in real life terms meant crummy, unfulfilling jobs in advertising, sales, and being a courier. It's not that there's anything wrong with these career choices, they're just wrong for me. These posts were purely a vehicle to finance my intentions and, of course, put food in my children's mouths. My artistic endeavours have been, until the last few years, generally in the composition and performance of contemporary music, the mechanics of which share a mutuality of creative processes with the discipline of photography. William Turnage of the Oxford University Press writes in his Ansel Adams biography, "The careful training and exacting craft required of a musician profoundly informed his visual artistry as well as his influential writings and teachings on photography." Ralph Gibson writes, "Melody is to music as reality is to photography." So how did I get here? I had a perfectly happy childhood growing up in rural Warwickshire. We were, in hindsight, certainly starved of diversity and culture, but rewarded with nature and relative safety. My dad was a singer, but didn't particularly embrace the arts, unlike me. Music left an indelible print upon me from an early age, probably when I was 5 or 6. So what made my head turn at such an early time of life? Sure, music was ubiquitous in the 1970s due to the power of radio and availability of vinyl records. That excited me. But what really blew me away was when I saw what these performers actually looked like on TV and the sleeve art of vinyl albums in Boots and W.H. Smith. That was it. I'd been corrupted. Nothing could infuriate parents more than Bowie or Roxy Music in their androgynous pomp and Anthony Price styling, and it gave me something to own and cherish. This love affair continued and gained pace through punk with the confrontational Dada and situationist imagery of Jamie Reed, sophisticated uber noir European slow shutter portraits of Anton Corbijn, and on to genre-breaking Imagineers like Chris Cunningham, which leads me to my practice prior to joining this MA. I'm certain that all this noise and vision has rubbed up against my poetics, but the more I appreciated the visual, the stronger my intentions were to both find my own style and gain a deeper understanding of photography as an artistic discipline. Sontag writes, "A modernist would have to rewrite Pater's dictum that all art aspires to the condition of music. Now all art aspires to the condition of photography." The genre that's always sung out to me was street, with an early love of Martin Parr's mirror images of us, the public, as the viewer and indeed the subject. I do struggle with his uniqueness at times, with the relentlessness of saturated colour and flash. Indeed, Bresson told Parr his photos were from another planet. As my practice develops, I find myself more drawn to the American street masters, Philip Frank, Walker Evans, Gary Winogrand, and like Winogrand, I'd never wish to be labelled as only a street photographer. I don't know whether this came from my cutting the shackles of the Cotswolds, free to explore new vistas, cultures and ideas. Probably. I know I'm a fan of human beings. I enjoy dynamic, fast, edgy environments. I enjoy the thrill of capturing the candid. But is it honourable? Do the questions of morality and disconnect act as a stimulant to me? Do I morally have to engage with my subjects, or would that completely change my practice? Jeff Dyer reminds us in The Ongoing Moment of William Henry Fox Talbot in his book The Pencil of Nature, of the question of whether you can take someone's likeness without their permission or knowledge. To many photographers, it's become second nature, an ethical blind spot, and this has been constantly debated. In Michael Engler's documentary Contemporary Photography in the USA, Gary Winogrand gives us his take on his practice. "I get totally out of myself. It's the closest I come to not existing, I think, which is the best, which to me is attractive." In my ongoing quest to better my practice, I embarked upon an OU course in creating a professional photographic portfolio during lockdown, which leads me back to when I was at angry young man, and when I decided to reinvent myself sometime prior to the OU course and indeed COVID, I was still delivering parcels and still being musical. Then the opportunity presented itself for me to openly question the ethics of my gig economy employer in public. Their unscrupulous practices had made me ill and not pleasant to be around. Now I had an opportunity to take them to task, and I was called as a lead witness in an employment tribunal. This was harrowing, but resulted in over 15,000 workers gaining worker status and the rights that accompany it. I quit parcels and realised there was a big world out there which I began to photograph in earnest. During the OU course, I began to work on my ongoing series, Joy is an Act of Resistance, the title of which comes from a line in a poem from The Telecycle by Toy Derrickott. That sentence became my mantra, and my intention was to illustrate exclusively the joy of masculinity within an authentic narrative. John Berger writes, "Photographs bear witness to a human choice being exercised in a given situation. A photograph is a result of the photographer's decision that it is worth recording that this particular event or object has been seen." Having experienced and enjoyed the concept of remote learning, it became self-apparent that I needed to push myself further. My work since joining the MA has matured and become more coherent. My lifelong imposter syndrome friend still sat in the corner, but now dormant. Which leads me to my current research project, which remains untitled. 2 years ago, my daughter was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. She'd always had difficulties in regulating her emotions, but this made it have a name. We went on a terrifying voyage of both recovery and discovery. Symptoms include avoiding abandonment, periods of emotional intensity, suicidal ideation, chronic emptiness, paranoia, and disassociation. With her permission and help, I've decided to document this from the position of a parent, and I aim to articulate my ideas through a more unorthodox, visceral approach and embrace other genres, eschewing my more denotative street and portraiture practice for a more connotative, metaphorical approach. I took inspiration from these words of Jeff Dyer, a recent Falmouth guest lecturer. A story that is latent in the image waiting to be extracted. I have become familiar with current practitioners in the field of mental health, and I'm particularly drawn to the work of Tara Ray, who documents the lived experience of depression and anxiety. In response to the overwhelming support for her photo book, Too Tired for Sunshine, she founded the Too Tired Project, initially on Instagram and now rotating exhibitions and a publishing imprint. I'm also interested in the work of Exeter-based All Right Mate, whose intention is normalising conversations about male mental health, one art project at a time. With my work, I intend to join this global discussion.